Second video. This one's going to cover the Warhammer 40K Terminator Chaplain, which I have over here. The idea for this one started a while ago. Before my Raynor suit, actually, I was trying to find something big, and one of my coworkers mentioned you should try Warhammer. I was like, that's right up your alley visually. I never played Warhammer. He was a big diehard fan. I think he used to play the tabletop, and my introduction to Warhammer was being told about how expensive it was. I was like, yeah, no. My only experience with Warhammer at all is the old Dawn of War games. I kind of took the idea and put it in the back of my head until like a year or two later. I was like, oh, I'll hop on Steam, see if I can find any games. I ended up finding Space Hulk Deathwing. It was, I don't want to say it's like a Left 4 Dead style game, but it was a 4-player co-op. You go through these like abandoned Space Hulks, taking creatures out, trying to find information, whatever, see what happened to the ships and recover artifacts and whatnot. It was an okay game. Not amazing, but I found it fun. I never really played with anybody online though. I heard the AI is not the best, so that probably would have had more fun. But while I was playing, I got obsessed just with the looks of the Terminator Chaplain in this game. I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. And immediately afterwards, I started going on this weird deep dive for Warhammer 40K. It didn't take long for me to just be like, yeah, I'm making this guy. Even if I don't know a ton about Warhammer, or if I'm not super invested in it, there's a ton of 40K fans at the conventions. I mean, 40K fans all over the place. So somebody's going to at least like it. And it was received pretty well. I used the same exact method I had done before. I don't have a picture of it, but I had done the same thing with the Raynor, where I had taken these images from like the official images, and I made a grid pattern over top of it so that I had 1 foot squares and 6 inch squares. That way I could scale it to me, because like I mentioned in my last video, I'm 6 foot even, so I could find somewhere where I would fit inside that, and then everything else would be scaled accordingly. So this time, anytime I'd get out the cardboard pieces, I immediately just made the 1 foot by 1 foot 6 inches by 6 inch squares, and then I just traced what I saw on the reference image. And I did a front and side profile, and then taped them together, and then started filling in the gaps to try and get that shape that I wanted. I used a combination of poster board, cardboard, lots of duct tape, until I got something that I liked. The chest piece on this thing is a lot simpler than the Raynor for sure, 100% sure. Still challenging, because there's a lot of small details that you don't really notice, because obviously the character never takes shoulder armor off, and you can't get good details because it's a first-person game. I mean, there's a character viewer in it that you can utilize. It helps a little bit, but the game has this this filter on it. You might be able to disable it in the settings. I don't think so. Not that I noticed, at least when I was originally grabbing reference photos. But it made it look almost like an old CRT TV kind of thing. I wasn't able to pick up like a lot of the details. I had to imagine some of the smaller things that were kind of hidden. That, and you couldn't really tilt things up and down to look at it. You could only spin it around. Similar thing for the duct tape pattern. After I made my 3D sculpture out of cardboard and poster board, wrapped everything in plastic wrap and then duct tape. You can see here that I outlined every edge and made a hash mark for where these edges would connect. I don't think I labeled the pieces this time, because everything was going to be a lot easier to just to identify what it all went to. The Raynor suit was way more complicated in that regard. So yeah, started cutting pieces out. I don't remember if I had. I don't think I had to really size this one in. This one was pretty spot on the first try. Might have closed the chest in just a little bit, but if I did, I didn't do much. One of my original ideas was I was going to make these back vents functional. That way it would let heat out. I'd probably have some hidden fans to kind of blow hot air out of the back. I never got around to it. I think I was pressed for time. Probably wouldn't hurt to help, but the fans I have in it now are okay. But yeah, I just cut out just strips of like 1-inch foam, put a little notch in the center, and just layered them all up. I made sure that what I did was I angle cutted both the front and back of it so it was at an angle, and then I used contact cement in the back so that when it would be up against, every louver was then at an angle. And that's what they kind of look like assembled. They're not perfect, but I mean, if you're familiar with the 40K universe, the Empire is kind of in a state of disarray and constant repairing of their armor. I mean, I think like the tech priests and whatnot are like very anal about maintaining the heritage of the armor and the weapons. They're kind of like restoration nuts in terms of like, yeah, fixing everything up. But I like the idea of these being just slightly off. It definitely made it look like it's been used and repaired and lived in, you know what I mean? It's not brand new, which these things weren't. Their suits were old. Everything in the 40K universe is old. But yeah, you can definitely see the framework in here that I had put in. It definitely wasn't as sturdy as the Raynor. I had to repair it a couple times. It fell apart on me a couple times for sure. It was not fun. My first year, it fell apart. The framework actually fell apart so bad that the mounting for the left shoulder broke, and it started to sag real bad. Eventually I fixed it, but that opened up a whole other can of worms that I need to address later in terms of repairs and whatnot. But yeah, you can see the very front beam in the PVC pipe framework is not even, it's barely in there right. I mean, it does its job, but I know when I wear it, the very front one like almost touches my chest, so after I'm wearing it for so long, it comes down and then starts to rub on my chest. You can see I added a couple extra layers to the front too. I ended up adding, I have pictures of it too, but I think the side ones I was trying to build out the side profile, because there's a like a weird lip on the sides of the armor, and every time I kept adding a layer, it wouldn't. I just like, I need another layer. So for the shoulder pads, it was a 3-piece layer. There's this centerpiece is supposed to, or this first piece is supposed to be the actual shoulder of the chaplain. It's never seen, but it's in here. It's going to act more as just a mounting hardware for the upper arms and the lower arms, which are going to be connected to each other. So this is just something for them to hang on to. But you can kind of see just how limiting this is going to end up becoming, because of how high it sticks up. It doesn't give the shoulders much room to move outward. My arm length, I could only ever move my arms out about this far, and then everything would just kind of get blocked and I can't move any farther. That's an upgrade I want to do later, to be able to at least be able to move my hands out this far. If I could get them that far, I'd be happy. This was the second layer of the pauldrons. They're not closed in yet on this side, it looks like, or maybe they never were. I think they are. I'd have to pull it down and see. I'm not doing that. I ended up combining that with the outer piece when I was done, just so it had something to like. It would have been a waste of time to put on 3 pieces of shoulders, especially if you're assembling this thing all by yourself in a parking lot. But yeah, you can see more little louvers on the inner part. This is the construction for the outer pieces. I think I ended up trimming down the shoulder pieces from where they originally were at. That's the only reason I could think of why I have this template laying on top of the shoulder piece, unless I just have the yeah, I had to have been trimming it down for size. Yeah, it looks like I can kind of see some of the lines. These extra little pieces of foam I put inside, they were more of a spacing thing. They I think I put them in first, and then I kept cutting them down. That way that the pauldron underneath the main pauldron, that they would always constantly be about an inch apart from each other. Gave it some depth, and it wasn't just laying on top of it. Yeah, here you can see I'm starting to add more layers to the front now that I had found the appropriate width for the side. I cut the whole thing out in a giant sheet, and then contact cemented the entire front. Contact cement stinks. It will give you a headache and make you high. Open some windows and wear a mask if you can. I mean, I'm bad. I don't. But yeah, do it. For your own safety and for your lungs, do it. Open a window, put on a mask, or at least do something for better ventilation. Because you and everyone in your house is going to get high, and not in a good way. Not in a good way. Like headaches, migraines. I mean, contact cement's great for foam, but it's terrible for you. So, yeah, open a window. If it's wintertime, figure something out. There's that giant piece now on the whole thing. Eventually I ended up trimming everything flush with a sharp razor blade, and I think I dremeled a lot of stuff to get things flat. I was experimenting with foam clay too. I'll show some foam clay stuff later, but I think I was using some leftovers to try and fill things in. It was a lot more effective than using like quick seal to fill gaps, which I still end up using. Foam clay does take several days to dry. Usually I would use it last, go to work for a couple days, and then my next day off I would trim it down to whatever shape I need. Foam clay is usually a slow process, so definitely take your time. Not slow process as in working with it slow, but you gotta work with it, let it dry, then work with it again, let it dry, and that alone can take a week or two. Yeah, this shoulder piece, you can see I use the foam clay to actually bevel out from the guard part of the pauldron to the flat part to kind of give it a nice smooth rounded end instead of it just being an L. It's now it looks like crap here, but the end result, you don't notice it at all. It looks good. And then this other pauldron, this is the other side, because the pauldrons were kind of like an offset in design. This one just has a straight lip around it with extra bordering. But yeah, I tried to get artistically, I tried getting it as accurate to the game as possible. I think in the end, the only thing I didn't add was the hood cloak for the skull helmet. I could have, but I had two things I had thought about. One, there are alternate skins, and some don't have that, and actually no, three. Two, looks better without it, and three, heat. That's more room for heat to escape my head. With that cloak on, I probably would have died. Well, not really, but you know what I mean. Heat exhaustion. Here you can see I'm starting to add a little bit more detail to the body piece. I'm not going crazy yet. I don't have to work too much on proportions. I did mention that in the other video about building up your base constructions first before adding detail. This wasn't that much of a problem with this one. Proportions were actually pretty spot on. I didn't have to make that many adjustments, so I was able to jump to detail pretty quick. This is the whole thing in sitting so far. I think one of the upcoming pictures is me actually trying it on. The skulls that you see on the gauntlets below, those are all foam clay. There are different types of foam clay, I guess you could say. If you do end up using, I think it's called Model Magic, you can buy it at any craft store. It's like a kid's thing. It's very similar to foam clay. It practically is foam clay, but it is terrible. Like, that's the best way I can describe it. It dries heavier, it dries slower, and it cracks bad. If you can get foam clay from like an actual cosplay foam place, get theirs instead. I use TNT Cosplays foam clay, or TNT Cosplay Supply. Their foam clay is really good. It's never given me any problems. I'll explain some of my molding processes later when I start talking about actual foam clay. But yeah, here I am actually trying it on for the first time. Altogether, the entire upper body piece, just to get an idea of just how big this thing is. I would say that it's, I wouldn't even fit in frame for how big that shoulder length is. But this thing is a pain to walk around in. I can't go down aisles in any convention I've been to so far, unless the aisle's wide and empty. I'm lucky enough that normally once I hit like a corner somewhere, I'm surrounded by like 20 people all wanting pictures, and I don't have to walk anywhere anyway. I mean, it sucks though, because if you find any pictures of my costume at a convention, it's like a bunch of people taking different pictures of the same guy in the same location at the same convention. It's, yeah. So every year it's like, one year I'm upstairs in this spot, next year I'm downstairs in that spot. Okay, now here's some interesting detail. I made this entire foam sword and then dremeled the crap out of the blade for it, because this is a decorative piece that I ended up putting on the pauldron, because I'm not a huge Warhammer lore buff, so I'm gonna get stuff wrong here. I already apologize in advance. So the Deathwing, I think they're like a subdivision of the Dark Angels, I think, and one of their sigils is I think a sword with wings. But fortunately, I'm going with like a 1-for-1 on the actual character, in-game character model. So if I get anything wrong, they're the ones that got things wrong. But these did turn out pretty good, though. Getting the wings to bend the way they did, I'm sure there was an easier way to do it, but to ensure that they not only were bent but stayed bent, I laminated 2 pieces of foam together. I traced out the pattern on the outer surface, and I think the inner surface I made bigger. I glued the 2 together, and then I started shaping them to the shape that I wanted. And then I would glue them together as I had them shaped. That way they held tension on each other. So the inner part was tighter than the outer part, so there was no way they could pull on it, because you had more tension on the inside or on the outside for whatever bends I wanted. And then I trimmed it afterwards. It was very effective. Getting the bend on both wings, I can't see it from this because it's on the other side of the suit over there. Surprisingly, it only took one go to get the actual bends practically even. Like, they're, I don't want to say that it's 100% perfect, but they're insanely close, and you can't tell looking at them if there is any kind of like micro defects in their bend. The detailing and the feathering, though, I probably could have gotten better. I had the stencil that I had used to cut out the wing, I had it drawn on, and then I cut them out, cut the rows of feathers out individually, and then drew them onto each one with a marker, and then carved them all out with an X-Acto knife, and then I took a Dremel to smooth everything out, make it and then probably could have found a better way to do it, but it turned out okay. When it comes to any kind of costume making, you're going to be the one that nitpicks all the details out of your costume. Everyone else that looks at it's going to be like, that's the coolest thing ever. And you're going to be like, oh yeah, but this part sucks and that part sucks. You're the only one that's ever going to pick these things out. And if someone else does, most likely that person doesn't have half the skills you do and isn't deserving of any of the criticism they give out anyway. So screw that person, if you even get any criticism from anyone. Yeah, this is definitely what I was talking about in terms of the how I ended up doing the feathers on the wings. But you can see I think after I had put them onto, then like only the bottom quarter maybe of the wing is actually glued to the pauldron. The rest then just kind of flow out on their own. But the bend on them I'm super proud of, because not only did I get it to wrap around the pauldron, but the top part's folded up and then the wings are folded out. Yeah, it's another kind of view of it. You can see how the top's kind of like it's all folded away from the pauldron, like it's actually spread. Okay, now we're going to talk about molding stuff with foam clay. Like I mentioned, TNT Cosplays where I get most of my stuff in bulk. Foam in general, it's where I get most of it from. I have rolls of it back in the craft room back here, or the storeroom, supply room. The only time I normally ever go anywhere else for foam is if I'm low, I need it now, and I don't have time to wait. So I might make an order, but then I'll run to Joann's and buy a sheet. So you can see that at the top of this picture, there's a plastic skull. I used that as a template, and I wasn't sure if making a mold out of hot glue was going to work. Surprisingly, it did. So what I did was I took sticks upon sticks upon sticks of hot glue and just covered that skull like crazy. And then I just hoped, I made sure I cooled the hot glue down, because hot glue's very rubbery. after it's dry. Like if you make it thin enough and whatnot, it'll actually bend. So I figured if I put enough in, reinforce the parts that need to stay, like the eye sockets and nose sockets and whatnot, that after it cools down, I should be able, in theory, to pull it off and pull the skull out, the plastic skull. And it worked really, really good. I mean, it's not 100% perfect, but doesn't matter. Now, as for how to handle the foam clay with this mold, you've probably seen people use foam clay in molds before. What you want to do is, once you pack it full of foam clay, put it in the freezer and because your foam clay is water-based. What causes it to dry to shape is for that water to evaporate and cure. What causes it to cure is water evaporates and whatnot inside of it. You're going to freeze that water inside that foam clay. That way, once it's nice and hard, then you can take it out of the freezer and peel off the mold, and then you just let it sit, dry, or unfreeze, and then dry. It works really well. You can see a lot of, like, you're every once in a while you're going to get some things to pull out that way. It's not a perfect method, but it's a lot cheaper than going like the silicone route, because that stuff is insanely expensive compared to a pack of hot glue sticks. $5, $50. How do you want to spend it? You know, but it's okay because aesthetically, you know, it's a worn costume. It's supposed to be, you know, hundreds or thousands of years old. So, or maybe not that long, maybe hundreds of years old. So it's been maintained and it's got nicks and cracks in it. So a skull mold for whatever, if it's got nicks and cracks in it, it fits the aesthetic. So I was completely fine with anything breaking off, because you can see in here parts of the cheekbone stayed inside the mold. Doesn't matter, or at least in this regard. But yeah, here you can see I don't know how many skulls I had made. I'm not even going to probably try and count. And there's probably like, what, 1, 2, 3, 4 of the large skulls. Yeah, there's just so many on that thing. Gotta love skulls. But yeah, same thing with the Sister of Battle logos that I also made. Just so many logos. The little skulls along the bottom, they were actually Halloween skulls I bought out of a bag. Like there was like an assorted, like a bag of 100 or something like that. I can't remember what they were originally for, but I had cut them in half, cut the back of the skull out so I could just glue them right up into the actual thing. And then googly eyes for rivets. You're always going to sound like a Morocco walking around, but googly eyes for rivet. Like, googly eyes are a cosplayer's best friend when it comes to making rivets. Like, I mean, I guess you can always go the extra mile and pop out the eyes from the back, but something about having that little bit of a when you're walking is kind of funny. Let's see, you got the two pauldrons together. I think in hindsight I might have trimmed the skull down a little bit, but I'm looking at it, it doesn't look like it's protruding as much, so I might have either trimmed it down some or done something to layer it up so it doesn't seem like it's sticking out that far. Alright, so we're going to move on to the helmet construction. So there's a little bit of story to the helmet first. So I think it was might have been a year or two before I worked on this. I made a berserk costume for a friend of mine, the same guy that actually recommended I do the Warhammer. We had a new convention coming in town. It was an anime convention. He was a huge berserk fan. I had never seen it, so I watched all the stuff. Immediately I fell in love with it too. I was like, oh, this is so cool. I was like, well, I'm gonna make it's like, I'll make him that for that convention, which I think was like I think it was in January. And I was like, well, I'll make the Skull Knight and we'll go as a pair. So I started working on the skull, I started working on the armor. I wasn't gonna get them both done in time, so I focused on his because he was paying me for the supplies and stuff anyway. I wouldn't mind trying to go back and make it, but I saved the helmet from it because I'd started making the helmet out of foam and it was sitting in the back room. So the helmet for the Terminator Chaplain actually is a helmet from the Skull Knight that I had started. The way I had started it was I made like a cap mold of my head. I wrapped my head in plastic wrap, duct tape, made a pattern out, and then I I'd put the foam cap on that I had made, and I would kind of work out slow piece by piece everything around my face until I had like a complete wraparound. And then I started adding extra details to try and get out details for the skull. Eventually I ended up sanding a lot of that down to get this here, and then I added like the crown spikes and whatnot. And it sat like that in my craft room / storeroom for probably a year or two before I started doing this. And I was going to make a fresh helmet for it, and I was like, well, this would save me so much time to just use this. It fits my face perfect. I mean, I made it molded on my face, and it already has everything I need. I have foam clay, I'll just start adding some detail to it. So I started adding a lot of foam clay to it just to build up onto it to get all the details I needed. I probably didn't have to go so much. I ended up carving a lot of it back and sanding a lot of it back. But yeah, I built up, before I ended up putting a lot of the foam clay on, I built up the, I don't know what part that you'd call around the sides of the head, like all the mechanical bits and whatnot for the hose mounting and stuff. Did all that first and then built the foam clay up around it. See, it's still pretty rough, but yeah, I made sure I like got in more details around like around the teeth and whatnot. I believe the eye sockets I made were just welding goggles, like plastic Harbor Freight welding goggles. Popped out the lenses, and I bought yeah, because it would have been way too hard to see with them. And I think the in-game, the lenses had like this like cross-hatched texture to them, so I was like, well, I'll just get something from Walmart. It might have just been like an organizing tray or something that had that kind of wire mesh, and I just cut that out, glued it inside. Yeah, that right there. It was effective. I could see out of it, but no one could really. But it was enough to obstruct light so people couldn't see my face inside. Field of vision's not perfect still, but I'd say it definitely it's like blinders. This is about how much I could actually see out of it. Right there, up next to it, I have the sign for the convention I was going to, Sci-Fi Valley Con. Really, the only convention I really dress up to. I've gone to like maybe one other convention dressed up, but I never entered any costume contests with them. I do need to go out more and visit more conventions. So yeah, here I started using a lot of quick seal and whatnot to try and smooth everything up and out, and I guess that's the last picture for the skull. This was a test fit I did for the lower portion. I don't have anything harnessed up yet, so I don't have the boots or the legs held up. I think I have, it looks like I have a harness set up for the upper legs to the waist, but I haven't had it the belt or anything yet. I think I wanted to do that first so I could gauge how far out the belt needed to be for this, because he's got kind of like a skirt kilt loincloth thing that goes over, and I need to know how big that was or how far out it needed to be. Yeah, so this big skull I have for the one leg, obviously I couldn't make a mold of it, so I took a ton of foam clay. Now unfortunately this was my experience with bottle magic, because that thing cracked bad and it took forever to dry. I mean, I understand that it was a big piece, but anytime I've dealt with model magic, even on small stuff, it dries slow and it cracks bad. This thing cracked bad. Like, the end result looks fine, but it would take so long to dry, because once it'll dry surface wise first, and then everything underneath just won't dry. So you had all that water weight inside of it, and it just made that leg so heavy. But like, for some reason with normal foam clay, for like craft foam clay from like say TNT or any of the other shops, they seem to dry very well. I don't know why, but yeah, they dry well, they dry fast, and they dry light. This thing dried slow and heavy. So what I ended up doing was I hollowed out as much of the back as I could to just get as much of that out so it would start drying from the inside as well. So for as big as it is, it's still like this, but it's still kind of hollow on the inside in certain spots. It's still heavy. Like, I think I actually broke the hip joint once on my, like right before the costume contest. I think that side I popped the hip joint out it pulled the hot glue all out from because the hip joint was basically just like a large PVC pipe and a small PVC pipe, and it would stay in, and then it was clipped in with a clip, and it still somehow managed to pull the hot glue around the PVC pipe out. I had to take it all off, go over to the cosplay repair station. Those guys, I think, yeah, ran by the 405th Halo Division team. They helped me get everything back up. I hot glued the ever living crap out of that. It's worked ever since. It's never popped out since. But props to those guys for helping me. But yeah, it was all because of that thing. That thing weighed out. And then after the convention, I took a knife. I hollowed out the back of that piece on the leg and just started pulling, just getting even more out, just to make it even lighter. Okay, so this is I'm starting to work on the chest details. I don't have a ton of pictures of these, but yeah, I think I had used a template where I'd drawn it all out on paper. That way I could flip it, because there was 2 skeletons with wings that are holding the sword. And then yeah, I don't have any pictures of the detailing of how I did it, but this is a picture of it on the chest armor. I did the same thing with the shoulder piece with the sword, with a smaller sword. This time, I think it was just like 2 or 3 layers of foam, and then just all dremeled out, shaped the size. The little sun lines around the sword handle, I think I just made a ton of angle cuts, flipped it, made another angle cut just to make a bunch of V's, like little triangles. I made a bunch of them, and then I just picked the best ones to apply and glued them all on, and yeah. This might be the last, yeah, it looks like that's the last assembly piece. Now we're just looking at random paintings. I think, I don't know what color what I did base coat wise, but yeah, Plasti Dip first. I almost always use black Plasti Dip. I've heard bad things about white Plasti Dip, but I never played with it to see. I mean, in all honesty though, most of us are not professionals, so it probably doesn't really matter what color you use as long as it works. So yeah, I think this was me painting the white parts of the armor. Yeah, I think I ended up going with more of a grayish color. Maybe that was when I was staining it. I don't have any pictures of the actual like cloth armor on it though. I can't remember for the life of me what kind of fabric I used. No seamstress, I don't know. So I don't know fabrics that well. I more or less just spent an afternoon in Joann Fabrics just trying to find something that looked thick, durable, and old, or something that would look old. And then when I painted the lines on it, all like the decorative lines, I think I masked it off with tape. This was after I had already sewn the patterns and whatnot, and I just laid down like the thickest white paint that I had found in the craft section. I think it was a fabric paint, but I laid it so thick, like it looks like almost like it's silk screened, like for how thick it is. I mean, sure, you can see there's like a lot of like etching in the edge of it. That's from the paint seeping underneath the masking tape, but I like that because it makes it look not perfect. It makes it look worn, like maybe someone had tried like repairing it and touching it up over time, because that's how these armors were supposed to be done within the universe. Yeah, okay, so here's a picture of the whole thing on the couch. It's big. Looks like I got most of the coloring all done here. A lot of it was hand painted, a lot of hand weathering. I don't know if I did. I might have started dark and gone light, which is usually kind of the opposite when you're weathering. You want to kind of fill in the cracks and whatnot, and then wipe away the excess. But fairly happy with the results. I've gone back over it over the years to touch up corners and highlight edges and stuff like that. Yeah, so I don't have many photos of prop construction. I used in-game models for reference. So for example, for this Redemption Bolter, I thought it was most fitting for this character. I'm sure that the characters have their own signature weapons in the lore and whatnot, but aesthetically it looked simple but also complicated, so depending on how much time I had, I could add to it. So usually when I do any kind of prop gun, I'll do the same thing I did with my armors. I'll do like the usual grid pattern, from the in-game model, and then I'll try to do an actual like side profile, trace it out. That way I can have some kind of like structural thing on the inside that is that as whole, and then I'll start building around it, kind of like here. I think that's like 4 layers of like 5mm foam, so it's about 20mm wide for the center construction of it, and then everything else will just be hollow. So you can see like the actual barrels of the actual chamber, the bolters kind of all hollow, just a hollow box. There I am with, I threw my one arm on just so I could see how it felt in the glove, and it fit pretty good. I think I ended up having to trim the handle down a little bit. I think after my first time wearing it, I had to do the same thing. I had to trim it down more because my hand actually started getting numb because it was so tight in the glove that I could actually take my hand out of the glove and the glove was still holding the gun because it was stuck in there. I wanted to have the ability to take my hand off of it and not numb my fingers. I'm not super happy with the detail in this. I made this the year after I had made the suit. It was I want to say I made it within like a week of the convention, because I think this was 2021. So this was like the first convention after the shutdown. I didn't have a chance to make anything new, and I was like, well, I want to do something. I figured I had a lot of scrap laying around. I hurried up and started making that. So you can see a lot of lines just are not perfect on it. I don't like wearing it or using it that much, even after these last 2 years. I still prefer the staff that I made originally. It gives me something to hold in both hands. But yeah, you can see like how rough the actual like bullet chambers are. At first I thought it'd be okay, because normally the chamber in a gun, or the barrel of a gun, is normally corkscrewed to direct the shape of a bullet out in a spiral pattern. That way it's kind of like throwing a football. It has if it has spin, it holds itself steady. So I was like, maybe it kind of gives itself that kind of a look. It still doesn't look that good. I made some like quick half bullet things to kind of hold in these magazines. And then the marker marks are just the opening, so I had an idea that I could keep them even. Details were pretty quick. The cloaked angel figures holding a sword. I'm definitely using a lot of like leftover foam, so you can see like so many different colors. Yeah, I didn't have a lot of foam clay left. I tried my hardest to make the little lion head with what I had, and that was all I had. I didn't want to go to the store and try and buy some model magic. I think I did, but I didn't want to use it because of my previous experience with it. I knew it would have taken longer to dry than I would have to make it. The gun wouldn't have gotten done, so I worked with what I had. If I remember right, I think I might have built up behind it with regular foam, like scrap foam pieces, to try and help give it a little extra support. The little banner thingy on top, yeah, that's just, what is that? It's like 1, 2, it's just 3 layers of regular foam. I want to say that's 2mm. Yeah, that's the kind of craft foam you can buy at Walmart, like the really cheap, thin kid foam. Walmart was like a 5-minute drive away, so I was like, that'll do. That's all I need. I bought a little sheet of like 10 pieces or whatever they sell. As far as the redemption thing I carved out, I carved them both out by hand. I think I wrote them down by hand to try and get as close as I could with the in-game lettering. And then I tried carving it all out by hand with an X-Acto knife. Surprisingly, it came out pretty good. I was very surprised. And then I think, yeah, here where I think I'm starting to fill everything in with what was that, quick seal? And there's another little character in front on the top between the two bullet chambers, or the was it target lines or whatever they're supposed to be. This might be the final paint job on it. Not a whole lot of detail. I think it was just like 2 colors. I went gray and gold, and then just highlighted the 2 colors with black, and then highlighted the edges of the gray. I don't have any construction photos for the staff. From what I remember, I might be wrong, but I believe the staff is canonically what a Terminator Chaplain would carry. There's a name for it. I don't remember the name. I'm not a huge Warhammer buff, so or Warhammer lore buff. What little lore I do know, I enjoy, but there's like hundreds of books and probably hundreds of games too, all made from different studios, so it's kind of hard to pick and choose what to get your information from. I remember being very happy with the turnout of the staff, which I'm looking this way now because it's over there. Actually, I'll edit this out. Okay, so this is, like most of these things, it's a two-piece, mostly for travel. Long PVC pipe in the center of this, all the way up to probably up there. It's all wrapped in the same amount of foam. And voila. When I'm wearing my suit though, I do prefer to handle it up here. It makes it a lot lighter and won't kill my wrists and my arm and whatnot as much. I have done repairs to it too. Actually, you know what? Let's get the other one. Alright. So, you can see just how terrible this looks. Does it matter? No, because no one's ever going to see that, because not only am I holding it like this, but when I'm wearing the freaking gloves, the hand's even bigger. So you might see the side profile of the lion head, and that's it. You can see the bullets. I do believe, no. I think I was going to have it so you can see the bullets in the front too, but I ran out of time. But you can see just how uneven all this is. And right here and there. Press for time. Always have to make compromises when you press for time. Yeah, some of the shading on top's not the best. Lettering turned out good though. I do like the lettering. I have it on both sides. I do have one more weapon I will show, but I'll wait until we see more photos of it. So, where are we at here on photos? Staff and the gun. So this gun was also made for Sister Battle Armor, which is right behind me. I don't have any process photos for that either, but that's why I decided just to grab the whole thing. This was also a quick build. I wanted to have an accessory for her because I had the staff for me and I wanted to have something for her. These guns are not hard to make. They're, as long as you have that side profile that I had showed before, like with the other bolter, the big bolter, the redemption bolter, I guess. It's not that hard to make these. Start out with your center. So, say this here is probably, what, let's say 4 pieces of foam glued together, and then work your way out in layers. So the next layer would have then been so let's say like that's this part here is all one giant piece in the middle, four layers of foam, 4 or 5 layers of foam. So then for these next 2 parts, let's say that's 2 layers here in the black, 1 layer here. So we'll do 2 layers here. That includes this thing, this, yeah, maybe, but you kind of get the idea. And then just work your way out, and then do all the details and stuff you got afterwards. It's neat. I could definitely detail this up more, smooth some lines out, repaint it. It'd be kind of cool. So this video is probably going to be a long one, but since we are on the topic of Warhammer, let's talk about this one. I don't have a ton of photos of it. I actually had to recover a bunch of them. Alright, so we have no coffee. Awesome. So I'm not sure exactly where this model came from. I don't know if it was from a game or just someone's render, but this is what I use for reference. I've seen this same exact costume done by a lot of cosplayers. I think Kinpatsu was the one that did it that made me go, oh, that's pretty cool. But it was the inspiration for this. In hindsight, probably one of my biggest things I wish I would have done right would have been the fabric. I think I was using this image as reference and I was like, oh, it's kind of like a shiny textured stuff, and the fabric I chose, like, it didn't want to sew right. It crinkled up, and it I would redo that with something else. Let's see, more random notes. I'm always constantly making notes. I'm either readjusting my work schedule, like my craft work schedule, like what days I'm off, what I can get done, how much time is left. I think I've mentioned this before, but yeah, you definitely need to like learn to compromise, make a schedule, plan ahead, and constantly reschedule. Make room for everything, and then once you start getting close to that deadline, that's when the compromise comes into place. It's like, so you're like, okay, I got this time frame to get like the base construction done. Once you start getting close to that, it's like, you're done. Don't waste any more time on it. Your base construction's done. What you have is what you got. Go on to the next phase. Otherwise, you're going to get stuck and you're going to be like right up against the deadline. And try and do everything evenly as well. So base construction, get it done in this frame. Have this little bit of frame to tweak your base construction, and now detailing, and you do all of it. That way, by the time you're at like the paint stage, your detail is consistent amongst all pieces. Otherwise, you're going to have like a super detailed chest piece, and then like your shoulders will be nothing, you know. These were very, very rough, these chest pieces. The reason there's two is I was actually going to make two, but that became impossible very quick, because the idea was I was going to make my chaplain, and then my sister always wanted me to make her a suit, and I was like, well, I'm making this, I'll make you this character. And she's like, oh, that's cool. Well, I was like, well, both her and my girlfriend are almost the same size. I would say they're pretty close. I think height-wise they might be a little off, but not enough that it would make the armor that much different. So I was going to just double everything that I made, that way they could both be like the Sisters of Battle. I think pretty quick it became apparent that I wasn't going to be able to do it. Time restraints, I had to put more time into the giant suit. I ended up scrapping just one of them. I kept the better one of these, but I had to trim the crap out of it to get it to fit right. Plus I've made suits for my girlfriend in the past, so my sister really wanted to try and do something, so I was like, oh, be a good brother. These were not the final though. These were just like the original mock-ups based on the duct tape templates that we had made for her. They came out rough. This is what I mean by like having that period to make your adjustments and stuff before adding detail. The cut lines were just bad. Like the actual cups were just uneven. Like it popped the spot in the chest out up, like up here, and this part down here popped up. It was so weird. There were so many adjustments I had to make just to get that right. Luckily I spent most of my time working on that then on the chaplain. So like every weekend I'd go down to my sister's house and be like, hey, try this on, how's that fit? You know, if it still fits, and then okay. So hers was a slow process. It's one thing I don't like working on things for people unless that person is here all the time, because otherwise you're playing a waiting game. You can only work so much. That's why I'll never do commissions ever. Okay, so here you can kind of see that I did I started finishing up the actual details. I put a couple extra layers on. The chest plates, or chest cups I guess, were more consistently round. I started working on the gorget piece for the neck. I ended up putting I can probably end up showing on there, but I put these two elevated pieces of foam right on the neck, so when you slide that down, there might be one in the front too, it prevents it from going anywhere. So it holds everything in place so it doesn't spin or fall forward or back. It has its own little channel to fit in, and then it just, everything holds itself tight. Yeah, I don't really have, I mean, pauldrons themselves are pretty easy to make. You angle cut your centerpiece, round off your ends with either heat or tension from your trim when you're gluing them to, when you're laminating those together. Similar to how I did the wings. There's a couple different techniques to go about it, but more googly eyes, layers to the pauldrons, It's a double layer, so you have the smaller ones underneath. And testing them out, make sure they look good. I still think they look pretty decent. I would like to go back and repaint it though. It definitely needs repainted. I mean, again, it's one of those things that you don't notice unless you're exactly up on it, but it was a real rush paint job. I could touch up some things. Boot covers, I think that was another thing. I think they both wore the same shoe size, so making boot covers and whatnot would have been insanely simple too, or in terms of for making 2 sets. I can't remember where I had stopped both ways. I might have had 2 sets of boot covers done at that point too. Random picture of let's see, gauntlets and elbows, some detail work on the backpack. You can see some of the foam skulls in the background too, or the clay foam skulls. Yeah, this was her coming for a test fit. My dad lived like a block down the road, so anytime she would stop at his place, she'd swing up real quick and be like, let's test this out. I'd have to dig everything out maybe I will towards the end of this, try and look at some more close-up details. But yeah, I think right now at this point everything on that is still just black plasti dip for a primer. I think that's just a close-up of the belt logo. Yeah, and then that's a photo of her with the assembled piece. She's not wearing a long sleeve, like any kind of like black long sleeve shirt underneath it. I should have mentioned that to her, but I didn't think about it, and it was all my fault too, because she had never done any costumes before. She's like, "Hey, I'm here, and what do I need?" And I was like, "Do you have like a long black sleeve, like a long sleeve black shirt?" She's like, "No." I'm like, "Wow, crap." And I was like, "It won't matter." So I think that's the end of this folder. We'll go to convention photos. Alright, so I've worn my Chaplain suit for 3 years now, 2019, 2021, 2022. I'll keep wearing it, I'll keep updating it, but it's not going to be my sole suit. Let's see, we got photos of all the stuff in the car and us getting ready. I think that year my girlfriend was 2B from Nier Automata, which I have an accompanying robot suit, which I'll show later. I only have a handful of photos of it, but if you want to see it, check my Facebook page. I'll put the link below. I think I was helping her with her mask or something. Yeah, when you make something this big, make sure you have a car that can hold it all. My car barely holds all of it, and it's a struggle. It's a real struggle. I mean, you're basically playing Tetris. But yeah, in this photo, me helping her out, you can see just how big the belt is on this thing. Yeah, the little frame with the bone, if I remember lore right, 40K lore, I think the bone is supposed to represent the Emperor's bones. I'm probably wrong, but it's supposed to like I think it's supposed to represent like his sacrifice for humanity or something like that. But it obviously isn't one of his, because he's like still alive in a vegetative state on the throne. It might be someone else's bone that's like enchanted or something. I can't remember the exact lore. I mean, Warhammer 40K lore is fascinating, but there's just so much of it. Yeah, more photos of everything in pieces. Alright, now I'm getting everything on. Getting the legs and boots on this is a lot easier than the Raynor suit, because the shoes are just kind of like loafers, so I can just literally put my foot in, and then the sole of the shoe, like the actual like platforms, it's just foam blocks, EVA foam blocks. They're actually these things. I borrowed a couple from the trash can at work. We use them as packaging materials, and if any ever break, they just take the foam blocks off and throw them in the trash. So I salvaged a couple. I still have a handful. I always tell the truck drivers at work, they all know, if you ever end up throwing any of them out, it's like just save a one or two and see if I need them. I have a good handful now, until work gets mad at me for taking stuff out of the garbage. But yes, these, because they can hold so much weight, I mean, this is high density EVA foam. This is like probably as high density as you can get. I could not squish this to save my life. This will hold thousands of pounds. This is how, maybe not thousands, but hundreds at least. It's more than enough to hold me. And it's insanely light, so when I glue loafers on top of that, it's like I don't even have stilts on. It is freaking amazing. I think you can buy high density foam online. I think TNT might have some, but they don't come in that thick. I think they only come in like 10 millimeters or something. I don't know how high density they are though, so you'll have to probably experiment with that kind of stuff if you want to use it. But I do believe Evil Ted, from the Evil Ted channel, he's made platforms like that with layered high density foam, so it's possible and it works. Yeah, I think in this picture I'm adjusting the hip clip. I'm getting the smaller PVC pipe that's on the upper leg into the larger PVC pipe that's on the hip, and then clipping the clip in that just holds them together in that joint. The clips are held on with is it like a nylon, kind of like your backpack strap material. It's really tough. It has some give this way. That hip's never going to go past that joint, so it only, what a little twist it has is more than enough. But you can see on the upper leg, I didn't go into full detail in the top part of the upper leg because you don't need to. I mean, that skirt's going to hang down close to the knee. You're never going to see it. Upper part of the body's, or all the lower parts, now done. Everyone else is just waiting for me. Yeah, I got everything on now except for the shoulder pieces. In the sunlight, it actually looked pretty cool. We were all impressed. I think it was the first time I've done like a full outdoor test fit with it. Selfie with me and my sister before they threw all my shoulders. But you can kind of see in the background there. So the inner shoulder piece was like very hollowed out, and then the PVC pipe that held all of it went up straight through, and then the larger pauldron had a large PVC pipe that went straight down, and then that would go through the larger hole in the smaller shoulder piece and go the whole way down. It held it nice and steady so it would stay straight, which I liked. But when it went to move it, it would not want to budge at all this way because it's in a PVC pipe like this far down. That's just not moving. For a standstill photo, it looks great. For mobility, it sucks. There's always going to be trade-offs, but see, a couple random close-up photos my sister took. I believe the bottom, I think it said never forget on both sides, and then had the skeleton who's supposed to represent the Emperor. You're supposed to never forget his sacrifice for humanity. I believe it was from the Horus Heresy, when his son tried to overthrow the Empire and almost took his dad's life. I mean, I mentioned in the other video, so like they always have these tabards and stuff, and I can never find out what was supposed to be written on it. And the tabard in the original game that I was using this as source reference, I couldn't read what it was because the lettering was too small. So I looked around online and everyone's like, oh yeah, we just make up our own things, we just put whatever. Most of the time they translate it to Latin or something like that so you can't read it. I'm like, okay, that's cool. So at that time there was like a lot of fan films and stuff for Warhammer that Games Workshop was kind of like copyright striking on. They were being very protective of their stuff, so I kept going back and forth with Google Translate to make up like this statement being like, you know, this is just a work of fiction, I'm not profiting from this, please don't sue me. And I kept trying to reword it so that like I would translate it to Google Translate, and then I would try and translate it back to English just to see if it would translate, if the translation would stay somewhat legible. And I had to reword it a couple times, but that's more or less what it says. But the tabard starts up so high, you only see like the last maybe 3 lines of it, and then at the very bottom is the two-headed bird logo. I think the left head has its eye, no, the right head has its eyes closed and the left head has its eyes open because they're too, to represent that the Empire is too busy looking into the past to look into the future, or something like that. I can't remember what kind of fabric this was, but I chopped it up, and then coffee stains to kind of add some grit to it. See, more random details. The chain is just a black plastic chain. I don't know where I bought it. Might have been off of eBay or something. A couple final photos. I think this is when we were finally inside before registration for the costume contest. Yeah, we were kind of just hanging out by the elevator. Immediately we just got in and we were already kind of hounded by everyone for photos. Yeah, I think the first time I finally got to walk down an aisle. You can see in the video I'm constantly like looking to my side because I can't see to my side because the neck guard kind of drops my vision to about like here, So even if I lean over, I can't see, like, I don't know, below my chin. And then the helmet itself gives me a vision like this, so my entire frame of view is this tiny little circle. And I had no idea how far out I actually stood. It's wide, but it's not as wide as I think it is, which is probably a good thing because it makes me extra cautious when walking around. See, we got ourselves more selfies. This is me backstage talking with some other cosplayers. This guy's from Kaiju Jaeger on Facebook. I don't think he has a YouTube channel or anything, but his work is insanely good. I think it was a year or two before this, and it was 2 years before. The first time we met backstage, we were talking. I was wearing a material outfit, and it was his first convention. He had done Monster Hunter for him, his wife, and his kid. And we were talking, and he's like, yeah, it's the first time doing this. It's like, I really inspired last year. There's this little kid as Diablo, and I was like, it's like, I made that. And he's like, you made that? And we did a couple quick poses in the back to us, like, play fighting. It's pretty cool because then it gets us some cool action shots with our costumes. This is probably the closest thing I've ever had to a cosplay shoot. Just us screwing around in the backstage, waiting for them to call us out to go on stage for the costume contest. Yeah, so there's this me and my sister going up for our round on the contest. Close up on my sister. Photos of all of us winning. I don't want to brag, but it seems like every year it's the same three groups of us. The two off to the far right are a couple. They cosplay together, and then there's me, and if I have anyone with me that time, and then the ones that I just talked about. Like, I don't want to say every time, but almost always we're holding a trophy at the end. It's kind of cool though, because I mean, you see each other's work, and it's like you want to one up each other every year. It's a nice friendly competition. This is why I'm kind of bummed out I haven't made anything in the last 2 years, 3 years now, since 2019. When I go out, I need to come out swinging. After that, it gets exhausting to just wear that kind of stuff all day. It's one of the nice things. I mean, even though I've fixed up the suit to fill in like the elbows and stuff with the accordion style fabric that's in these things, I've always left the armpit section open so I can just get my arms out, because that's another nice thing. I can take my hands out, get some air, and the arms will still all stay intact because everything's all connected. But yeah, I think I'm just cooling off my arms there, letting go of all the weight, definitely taking it all off. Just all of it's just kind of piled up there. Now here's a video my sister took of me. I think they had taken my pauldrons off, and I was walking out. I think my shoe felt weird, but there was nothing wrong with it. I thought something would come loose. But yeah, you can definitely see just how exhausted I am walking out of that. My hair is just soaking wet. That was just 2019. A couple more from the previous years, but these are all just scrounged up. Yeah, this was, I think I didn't carry the staff this time. I just carried the gun that I had just made for the year prior, because I wasn't making anything. I just wanted to have something to bring along. I don't remember, because I really like the stance in this picture. It looks like I have my shoulder kind of like cocked up, like I'm ready to fire or something, like some kind of like Wild West thing. But I think in reality, I think that shoulder wasn't pushed down the whole way. But just because of that, with that slight tilt, it makes it look like it's even higher. Yeah, it looks like it's not pushed down the whole way. It's sticking up like maybe an extra inch or two. I mean, I didn't know. You can't tell that when you're wearing it. But yeah, looking at these pictures now, you can see it's just slightly up higher. But no one would notice. I mean, all you gotta do is just grab it and shake it, and it'll just pop right in. 2022, I think I'd done a couple small upgrades. I think we had just brought these home out of storage, and I wanted to wear something, but they all needed repaired, and it didn't have like almost any damage done to it from the heat being in a storage unit for so long. I'm trying to think of the only thing I might have done. I think I spent a day or two highlighting edges, repainting a couple pieces here and there just to like add some detail. normally finding a parking spot in the front parking lot's like impossible, but we somehow found a spot this year, I guess. And I wore the whole thing up to the front. It was kind of my first time actually getting to watch myself walk in the whole thing, because there's this giant row of glass doors in front of the convention center. So the entire time I'm waddling my whole way up. It looked cool, but I also got to work on like my imposing walk stance, because I could see myself doing it, so I could see like how much exaggeration my big steps I had to take just to walk were actually causing the entire suit to... And yeah, I got to see a side of the costume that I never got to see before. I was really pleased with it. It seemed so freaking cool. Yeah, in this picture you can see I think I wore it for 2 days. The first day I carried both weapons, and then the second day I think I just carried one, because it was too much to carry both. Oh yeah. So I think this guy's the author of this book. Yeah, because he posted this picture on Facebook. So he's got a cookbook that I still want to buy that he had a whole table for. It's called the Necro Nom Nom Nom. It's a Lovecraft inspired cookbook. I just had to show it because that photo actually turned out really good in terms of how far out I am with my arms and everything. Like, it was a good pose, good lighting. The lighting in that section of the convention floor was really good. Unfortunately, I couldn't really walk that far around in it because of how big I was. When in reality, I think I'm only about as wide as maybe 2 people walking side by side, so I shouldn't have any problem walking down any aisles, but you get paranoid when you're that big. This one's a photo from it says Felix Wong. I think he's got a Facebook page too. I'll try and add all these people in the description. He was taking photos of all the cosplayers and stuff. Yeah, I think in this video, this is an excerpt from a compilation video. I can't remember the name of the person, but I'll link it in the description too, because I don't want to take someone's stuff without their credit. He took a bunch of short videos, made like a little music video of like all the cosplayers and stuff. Yeah, I think that's it for as far as photos go. So alright, so this is probably gonna be a bad idea. So I haven't pulled these out in a while, so as far as like the closer you get, you can see just how like all the small little imperfections. It's not, I see like the little makeshift hinges. You can see that it's not even fully painted the whole way on the inside, because you're not going to see it. It's a waste of time to go beyond what you can see. Spots behind certain pieces of foam, if you can't see them, there's no point in going into the effort to paint them. As far as the gloves, I just got like regular work gloves. I mean, she's holding a gun, or you're never going to see that part of somebody. I mean, buy some cheap gloves from the store, and that's all you need. Yeah, there's a little bit of detail that you weren't able to, like, see. You can, the closer you get, the more you can see like how inconsistent some of these lines are. And I can definitely go through and touch this up. It's the price you pay when it comes to making stuff for a convention. You're crunched for time constantly, and you could do things great, but then you wouldn't get it done in time. So you have to kind of live with what you got, fix it up later. Yeah. So again, I mean, like from here, it's like, yeah, it looks good, but the closer you get, you can see, like, especially up in this part here, yeah, you can see like all the little spots that weren't painted that great. I just have it held out in the back with a small hook on the back of the gorget piece, the neck piece. It just hooks in there and it just stays. Surprisingly, it doesn't tilt too much to the side. But yeah, you can see now how the I have like sections of foam that kind of stick up, so that when this comes down on top of it, it won't move around. But you can see there's like little tiny details I have. Like I can even get it. There's like a figure, like a winged figure inside that. The skull is another one of the molds that I had done. Same with the sigil there. And this one here, obviously the edge work, painting wise, not the greatest. Nothing in the back, but you can see that hook. It's just a normal hook from the store to like hang whatever. Engraved it in the foam, made sure it's all nice and sturdy. Alright, so I think that's it for these. I've done a tour of the craft room in my first video, where I kind of go over a little bit more visually with the Terminator Chaplain. I'd do that again, but that'd be kind of a waste of time. You can just check that one out if you want. But it'd just be the same thing. Maybe just showing some imperfections or how I kind of wore some stuff. I'll do a couple more of these for some of the older projects. I'll have to combine them together because I don't have many pictures of stuff. I'll try and do this as maybe filler as I'm working on my Halloween costume. I'm trying to take as much video of that as I'm going through it and hopefully come up with something decent, or at least something worth watching. Until then, thanks for watching.